You're listening to a Mamamia podcast.
Mamamia acknowledges the traditional owners of land and waters that this podcast is recorded on.
The feeling when you need to put your hair back urgently.
I know. I get
it's a real feeling. I just had it and I was like, I will use an electrical cord if I have to. I am so
I know
desperate
what you mean.
I actually can't stand it.
I entirely agree there should be a word for that.
What
because
is the word?
And then when
For
you
me, it's when I
can't-
need to concentrate and I need to...
Oh, your hair just suddenly
Yeah,
feels...
just-
And if you can't find a hair tie, you're right, I have used a shoelace.
It's like not being
I've
able to
used-
find a tampon. It's the worst.
Hello and welcome to Mamamia Out Loud. Today is Friday, the 1st of November, and with the weekend so close, we're leaving the news cycle behind to spin itself into its stressed out frenzy and talk about other stuff. But before we begin, we've had a lot of new listeners enter the group chat recently, so allow us to introduce ourselves. My name is Holly Wainwright.
Who are you though?
Well, who am I? That's an existential
sorry.
question
We don't
for
have
a
time
Friday.
for this. I'm Mia Friedman. I am the co-founder of Mamamia and some other things.
Okay. I'm Emily Vernem. I usually host our daily entertainment podcast, The Spill, but I'm filling in for Jessie today.
What's your job title here?
I say writer and podcaster, but I kind of gave it to myself.
We could all have writer and podcaster, actually.
I make up a different title most weeks.
Even
What
though
are you
we're all
today?
at very different stages, we could all be writer and podcaster.
I noticed in my auto signature it said I was creative director, but someone else has that job.
Not you.
Aren't you co-founder and head of
Do you know what? Now I'm just co-founder.
Head of
I'm
creative.
happy.
Okay. She's very important. Anyway, on the show today, what are officially the happiest and least happy decades of our lives and why that whole question is a crock? Also, recommendations for your weekend and beyond, including the book that might finally change my life, Em, who's got something to help you do your hair, and Mia's actually got a whole list of recommendations for us today. And our best and worst of the week, which include a Gwyneth update from me. Em's got another complaint about working, and Mia had an encounter with a cockroach. But first, Mia Friedman.
I have to tell you, in case you missed it, that there is a common rental behaviour that is dividing households, millennial households, and it's also dividing the internet after there was a post on the Reddit thread Oz Property Chat, which sounds riveting. Should be hanging out there more often. It got a lot of traction, this post, and the dilemma was this. It was a man who posted that the head renter in the share house where he lived had sent him a WhatsApp message after noticing that this guy's partner had been spending more time at their share house than before. And the message said, 2-day rule for partners. 3rd day, you pay for a week's rent. Oh, please pay the extra week of rent. I hope you understand that it costs me money. The poster then asked the forum if this is allowed before hundreds of people gave their opinions, because that's how the internet works. Now, before we get to those, I just want to go, the opinions I care about more are the opinions of the Out Louders. And we did our own poll. 64% of you said that if a partner is staying over for long periods, they should contribute to bills like water, electricity and the internet. 10% of you said the partner is not living there, so they should never have to pay. And 11% said it's perfectly fair for a partner to have to contribute after 2 days.
What?
You live alone, don't you?
I live alone. I used to have a housemate, but I never had this particular issue.
She got a boyfriend while you were living together. You started
She
off
got
as
a
two single
boyfriend on the
girls.
last day of us living together.
Okay.
So we never had, I mean, we had like guys over that we were dating for a long period of time, but never like more than 3 days.
3 days in a row.
Yeah. Actually, not even like it would literally be one night and then we'd see him like next week. And I'd be like, hey, Billy. And she'd have to be like, his name's not Billy. And I'd be like, oh, got it wrong.
It's quite awkward when it's your house, isn't it? Because you can't sort of maybe come out if you live, maybe no top on or maybe, I don't know.
I do
I'm
think-
thinking about nude households.
There's a difference between being in a share house of 4 people and one of those 4 gets like a partner and it becomes 5 versus just having one housemate. Like I feel like you would feel the difference more like going from 2 to 3 versus 4 to 5.
I've lived through this many
Have you?
times. Like obviously not for a long time, but I lived in a lot of shared houses for a lot of years. The biggest was 6. For years and years I lived in one with 4. And I think that everybody getting very incensed about this is just passive aggressive because it's not actually about the electricity and the water. Like, it's not really that likely that one person being there and having a quick shower every morning is really like impacting your water bill that much. What it's about is
the milk.
I don't want you here.
Oh, no, sorry. I mean, sorry, I agree with you. But it's also the milk, the bread.
But it's not,
using
though, is
the
it?
facilities.
Because what if they're not? The problem with making it about money is I could easily say, Betty's coming over, but she won't use our milk. She won't use our blah, blah, blah. Like, it's not about that. It's about the fact that they didn't sign up to live with Betty and suddenly they appear to be living with Betty.
Yeah.
And so I think that making it all about the money, and I'm not pretending that money isn't important, but making it all about the money is almost like a passag. Like him saying more than 3 days they pay a whole week's rent, that doesn't even make sense. Do you know what I mean? Like, so it's not about the money. What it's about is get your boyfriend/girlfriend out of my living room. Which is relatively fair.
It is fair, but
because
if the housemate's
as you
can
said,
they move
you
in?
didn't sign up to live with them. Oh, if it's can you move in, that's a whole other thing.
Yeah.
And I did that. I moved boyfriends into shared houses, maybe only once. That's one of those awful conversations where you're like really stealing yourself and you're like, so I was thinking.
How did you pitch it?
Martin's been kicked out of his house or his rent lease is up and he's going travelling soon. That was always the story, going travelling soon. So it would only be for a few months. And then they would, obviously, if they're moving in, then they contribute to the rent and everything. Of course they do. But then you get the argument, should you pay double? Should you pay a little bit more? Like, it's very thorny, but it nearly always really is about the person and the sharing of the space with the person.
It's really niggly, isn't it? Because I was living with a couple of girlfriends and one of them had their boyfriend over a lot. And suddenly we didn't really want to share a bathroom with a man. Like we wanted to be able to come in and out of the shower in a towel, or suddenly when everybody's getting ready for work in the morning, there's also a guy, and guys take a long time in the bathroom. I don't know what's wrong with their bowels, but what is that?
No, they go on their phones when they're on the toilet.
It's an
and they
iPoo.
sit there and they scroll forever.
I would have thought that these issues would be different now because when I was in shared houses, it was that thing of like, what was on the telly, everyone had to watch it. Do you know what I mean? So those were often the kind of things you'd argue about is like someone would come home and like, me and Betty are watching Survivor. Whereas now everyone can just live their separate lives. It's not so much communal time. It still annoys people now.
There's nothing worse than coming into your kitchen like in your underwear after like a big night wanting to get your Panadol when a hangover and there's like a man sitting on your couch.
Or
Who are
a
you?
stranger. People study happiness. I think we know that, right? But I'm going to suggest that all or some of the funding that goes to working out exactly what year of your life might be the happiest, what decade, what moment, etc., could be redirected to something actually useful. Like
Cancer.
a laundry folding robot, I was going to say, but you were much more worthy with your cancer suggestion.
Some of us care about,
Other people,
medicine.
like health.
Yeah.
Because I just read a piece about your happiest decade based on research, and I say it's full of BS, but let's get to it. According to this article in The Guardian by Sophie Brickman, she's citing research, by the way. I'm not suggesting for a minute that she's full of BS. She's not basing it on vibes. She's basing it on research. Mm-hmm. Your 40s are your least happy decade. Your least happy year is exactly 47.2. Interesting. One of the reasons cited for this in this research, of course, is all about family. Dependent kids, aging parents, a lack of time to yourself for self-care, and so on and so on. This information has sent younger millennials and Gen Zs into a bit of a tizzy because the idea that happiness is U-shaped, which is something that a lot of the happiness researchers have found, the idea that you start off happy, then you get really fucking miserable, and then you end up happy again, is causing dread. Now, I'm going to tell you why I think it's nonsense in a little bit, but first I need to hear from you two. Em, does hearing this make you not want to grow up?
Yes, because in my head, I always thought 36 was meant to be my year.
Why? It's your angel number.
It's my angel number.
What was going to happen in that year?
36 is the year where I am married. I don't have kids yet, but I have a big house and I don't.
I think you should probably have kids by 36.
No, I wasn't laughing about that. I was just like, how are we? Where's this big house and the marriage and all this grown-up life coming from?
I might be working part-time here because I know that's quite easy. I just be like living like with all my friends and family. We'll have them over for dinner parties. Like that's my year and it still feels
Do you
far
see it
enough.
as like a proper grown-up year?
Yeah. It's like the year where I feel like I have my shit together by then.
So when you read this, the fact that will just put you on the precipice of misery, does that make you worry?
It makes me sad because she also said that like happiness is like the U shape where like it goes down at 47.2. So I'm assuming that I'm meant to be up right now?
Yeah, you're meant to be really happy right now.
So it only gets worse from here.
Living your
before it
best
gets
life.
better.
So is it?
So
Because
you're
you both have been 47.2.
We have.
have.
I guess ideally, which is good news for Holly and I, you want to look at that number and you want it to be in the rearview mirror.
Yeah.
And you want to say, okay, I'm on the upward trajectory. What's interesting about that number is that I think it correlates with if you have children and parents in your life, that the needs put upon you by other people are at their highest. And the knock-on effect of that is financial pressure. A lot of people want shit from you, right? Yeah. Your children might not be little, but there's this, myth that as they get older, they need you less. They actually need you more. The stakes are a bit higher as they get older. So there's a lot to be done when they're really, at that kind of age. I've bucked this a little bit because my parents had me young. I had my first child young and he had his first child young. So I have always been out of step with my peers, and I'm still out of step with my peers because now at 53, I've got a grandchild and my kids are grown up except for my youngest who's 16, but because he's a third child, he may as well be 25. He learnt to sort himself out a long time ago. And I'm fortunate enough that my parents, touch wood, are 80 but in great shape. And so are my parents-in-law. So I think what's interesting, Jennifer Aniston said that, I always
the
quote.
Soothsayer, the
expert on happiness.
Yeah.
Forget Yoda. It's all about
Jen
Ann. She said that you need to have therapy in your 30s so that you can enjoy your 40s. Her father died. She was estranged from her mother. She didn't have children in her 40s. She's now well into her 50s, probably her late 50s. And she had therapy. So I imagine that for her, and she spoke about this when she was in her 40s, that's kind of her life advice. And I actually agree with that. I think that if you haven't sorted your shit out in your 30s, your 40s are really hard.
I just think the very notion that there's a point at which you've sorted all your shit out is nonsense.
No, I don't mean, of course, there's always more shit to sort out.
I was going to say,
tell me about
is there
it.
no shit left by the time you're 53?
Which is a reminder to go back to therapy for me. But there's new shit, but I mean, they're very much building block decades, 30s and 40s. And I think that a lot of decisions you make in your 30s inform your 40s. And I think understanding yourself well, certainly if you've made bad decisions, don't we all, and you've got patterns that you keep repeating, to understand those in your 30s is really helpful in your 40s.
I think these kind of studies directly affect our happiness, right? Because the very idea that there is a destination, like happiness is a destination and you're going to get there and you're going to stay there, it's absolute nonsense. And the older and wiser you get, the more you realise that there are pockets in every year, in every decade of absolute joy, absolute despair,
of course,
absolute exhaustion.
But
my point is, so chasing down and giving people data about you're not going to be happy in your 30s, you're not going to be happy in your 40s. Maybe you'll finally get happy in your 50s, especially in the endless thirst for information world we live in. I think it's really stupid.
But it's different for everybody, and you only know what your decade was to generalise over a decade in the rearview mirror. Em can't possibly know. She might have peaked.
I don't even think there's such a thing as a happiest decade. I think that you've got to stop thinking that there is a place where you will sit. Or there are little bits of happiness in the shittiest times and the good times,
How old
right?
are you now, Em?
28.
How's your 20s been?
Horrible.
How were your teens?
Why are they horrible?
Oh, I just feel like 20s feel like I'm in my waiting phase.
A lot of pressure in your 20s, I think.
And then 30 is meant to be where I start sorting everything out and then everything will sort out. If I could just tomorrow wake up as a 30-year-old, I'd want that.
Why?
Would you?
Yeah.
What's the point of wishing your life away or thinking, rather than going, okay, so today I could do some things that would make me happy? I think it's a very specific view that if we always think that we're never quite there, I'm never quite there, I'm not at my happiest yet, that directly affects your happiness.
Because this is not a recipe or a blueprint. This is just an observation from a whole lot of people that have been asked to self-assess the decade of their life that was the best and the worst.
I
And
don't
what
think I could do that though.
What I think is interesting about this, and of course it doesn't apply to everybody, but is to just understand the meaning behind it. Because, we talk about seasons, and some seasons you expect them to be great and they're actually tougher than you think. And women are always interested in the season that's coming up for them. If you are single, you want to know what it's like maybe to be married. If you're married, maybe you want to know what it's like to be divorced. If you've got one child, you want to know what it's like to have two children. And you want to know what it's like to have teenagers when your kids are small. And so I just think that it's not a guarantee that this decade will be bad, but it's just made me think that for women, and I'd be so interested to know if it was different for men, for women, the less people you have depending on you in a caring role, the happier you are. That's why women's happiness tends to go up as they get older. And I think we're sold such bad news about growing older and that, you got to be in your 20s and we're in this culture that values youth above all else, particularly physically, that it's actually lovely to think that things get happier.
But I think it's not good for happiness to always think you're in a waiting room. Like, I think that that's the problem, is if you always think I'm in a waiting room and things are going to be different. Because what you said before about assessing in hindsight is so true, right? But even that shifts because I had my kids later. So again, as you've already said with your anecdote, like this is kind of bullshit because that all can depend on different times, right? So my 40s, I had little kids, incredibly, incredibly difficult decade, right? But the thing is that I know now all the joy that was in that I will miss for the rest of my life. I will look back at those years for the rest of my life and the pockets of joy that I had, even though it was hard, and I won't think it was my unhappiest decade.
So
There's
what
no
do you
way
think
that I will.
It's your unhappiest decade?
I think there have been shit years in all my decades, really stressful, difficult times, really beautiful, glorious times. Like, I know it's unpopular not to just slot into let's just say it's it. But I think that genuinely you're happier if you think that you can find happiness all the time. Little bits of it, like today, tomorrow, next week, but not go, I'm living in a shit world right now and it's going to be better when I lose weight, when I get that job, when I meet a partner, when I buy my house, that is the thing that keeps you unhappy.
Yeah, that's interesting. I just don't think that's what this survey says to me. I think it's just interesting looking at different phases. And of course, it's not like when you generalize about a decade, I think for women particularly, you know who you are more as you get older. And I think maybe it's the word happy that's tripping you up. If it was like challenging or difficult, I don't know. You don't like being put into boxes.
But I also don't think it's I just think that there's too much emphasis on this, as I say, that happiness is a place you'll get to one day. I don't think that's true.
When you think about the next few decades of your life, how do you kind of imagine them rolling out?
Well, when she's 37, she's going to have a big house and a
When
husband.
When I'm 36, I'm having my big house and my husband. I genuinely don't know. My biggest complex from my age right now is because my mum had me when she was 28 and I'm the oldest child. And since I was young, I've always had, especially from early 20s, I've always been like, oh my God, do I need a boyfriend? Should I get a boyfriend now? When do I have kids? And my mum's like, don't worry, because I was old for my age to have kids. I was only 28 and now I'm 28. And then she's like, stop stressing. Like, I can feel you stressing. Don't stress.
Well, yeah, I feel bad now that I said 36 is too old to not have kids yet if you want them.
But I think I was like really looking forward to my 40s because
Until you read this article.
Until I read this article.
See, Holly's right. It's made you unhappy.
Because I loved watching my parents in their 40s. Like, I remember those years so clearly. I remember them just having so much fun. And surely, like, they would have been so stressed behind the scenes, but me and my sister never saw it. And they were just so much fun. And I talked about this last week about now I'm seeing my parents age. But in my head, when I picture my parents, it's in their 40s, like taking us out, going to parks, like having fun.
That's so interesting. I hated my 20s. I'm very happy to make generalizations about decades because I like boxes and leaderboards.
Well, there are no happy times in your 20s.
I reckon, but that's not what this is. This is looking at a decade and generalizing about a decade. So for me, I really struggled in my 20s. I separated from my husband, lost a baby, didn't know who I was undiagnosed with all sorts of things, and I had a really, really difficult time in my 20s for a whole bunch of reasons that I only understood once I started going to therapy properly and addressed a bunch of things in my late 20s, early 30s when my life essentially fell apart in my 20s. My 30s were about consolidation a little bit more, kind of working out who I was, but still all of those big decisions like how many kids to have, who's my partner, getting back with Jace, not, whatever. And then I loved my 40s. I really did. I've loved my 40s and I'm loving my 50s. It's interesting and it's going to be different for everybody, you know, just in the same way that not everybody is the average height or whatever, the average age. Can you not generalize about any of your decades when you kind of look at them as seasons? It didn't mean that I hated every day that I was 20, but just as a decade.
No, I understand the concept. It's not that I don't understand the concept. I just generally think that it's not helpful. Because, yeah, my 20s, all of that craziness and a lot of shit happened to me in my 20s too. There were also amazing adventures that turned my life in the direction that it's gone in. So I could not possibly say that I was miserable. I was miserable some of it. I don't know. I just don't see it that way.
I get confused.
And I think for me that's helped me because I don't. And aging has really changed my view on happiness. I used to think much more like that about it, like there's a place and I'll get there and if I make these changes in my life, everything will fall into place and it will be great. And I think wisdom, hard-fought life wisdom has taught me that that's not true.
I get confused on the phrase figuring out who you are. I don't know what that means.
Mia? What do you
I don't know
mean
what
by
that means.
For me, it's about understanding why I like certain things, why I respond in certain ways, why I don't feel right in certain situations where other people seem to feel right. To me, it's about undoing the shoulds, the shoulds of life.
And that's definitely something that makes you happier.
Yeah, it's going, oh, everyone likes parties. I don't like parties. It's not because I'm broken or because I'm abnormal. It's because that drains my battery and I understand. And then going, oh, well, what fills my battery? And learning about that. And maybe you can do that at any age, but there's a certain amount of you just need life experience to be able to look in the rearview mirror and understand yourself a little bit better. Does that make sense?
I think that's why I'm not enjoying my 20s because I feel like I'm still at that age where I still have to do things that I don't necessarily want to do. Like I still have
sticking around for a long time, Em.
Oh. I don't want to do that.
But if you've worked out what you do and don't like, you know, or how you respond or, you know, sometimes it can be about the romantic partners that you choose. Sometimes it can be about patterns you're in with friends or with, you know, it took me a long time, for example, to work out that I fall in love with people, friendships, and I'm a fast starter. And then I'm like, oh. And so, God, I had to do that a lot of times to work out, hey, maybe don't come on so strong, so fast. Maybe just sit back a little bit. That's just one example. And not traveling. I kept thinking, if I travel more, I'll like it more. Everyone else likes travel. I don't like travel. And I've unpacked all the reasons why I don't like travel. So I guess knowing myself better is judging myself less.
After the break, Mia is about to go rogue with her recommendations.
So rogue.
Mamamia out loud!
So we love giving our recos as much as you love hearing them. So settle in because Mia has a reco blockage which needs unplugging. That is so gross visually.
Yeah, I've got reco constipation because I haven't been on a Friday show for a couple of weeks.
Oh, no, but
so I'm backed up.
But we're going to keep you hanging because I'm going to make you go last.
Okay.
the visual of that.
Hole, you're up.
My recommendation is a self-help book, which is very unlike me because I hate self-help books. Happily, this is a self-help book written by someone who also hates self-help books.
Perfect for you.
Yeah, exactly. He's called Oliver Burkeman, and if you know about these things, he was a Guardian columnist for years, and he wrote these columns about self-development, but from very much this like raised eyebrow, this is all bullshit perspective. And then he wrote a book that became a massive bestseller called 4,000 Hours, and he got interviewed everywhere, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, his new book, it's called Meditation for Mortals, and the reason I picked up this book that I would formerly hate is because, as regular Out Louders would know, I'm trying to learn how to meditate. It's not going well. Maybe I should just accept. As per the previous segment and Mia saying, get to know yourself, maybe I should just accept it's not for me, but I'm trying hard. Anyway, it's like a little course. The way it's been designed is you read a chapter every day or listen, I'm listening. So like the first 5 minutes of my walk in the morning, I listen to one. And it's like little insights into basically recognizing.
Like little bits of wisdom.
Yeah. And like little bits of kind of, instead of thinking that one day you're going to finally become this productive, incredibly sorted out, like infinite person who can write a book and make dinners from scratch and keep everybody happy all the time and do it, like maybe just chill out a bit.
So is it like kind of generic therapy in a way?
It kind of is, but it's like little insights and life lessons. So one of the things that I found helpful the other day was this thing about you keep a to-do list, but you should also always keep a done list because your to-do list never ends. And sometimes you need to remind yourself that, look, I did actually do all that shit. And things like I was talking to you earlier, Mia, about like he's saying when you feel really trapped in any situation, remember that you do have the freedom to change it, but you have to work out whether the consequences are worth it.
Oh, I like this.
So anyway, it's not like me, but, you know, I'm trying to grow. And
What week are you up to?
I'm only up to about week 7. So I'll report back just to torture you all on
How
whether
many
or
weeks
not
are
I
there?
ever learn. I think there's 28.
Sorry, every day for 28
Oh,
weeks.
no. Sorry, there's 4 weeks. So how many days are there in 4 weeks? 30-ish?
Yeah.
So you're day 7.
The idea is if you read or listen to a chapter every day, can't you tell I'm a better person already? It's going really well. It's called Meditation for Mortals by Oliver Burke.
Okay, my turn. So I'm recommending a product today. It's called the VS Sassoon Unbound Cord and Cordless Curler. So I went to a hair event recently, and I'm not a hair person just because I have a lot of hair. It's thick hair.
Very nice hair.
It takes me at least 1 whole hour to do my hair, even like straightening it. It's a lot, and drying it.
You've got beautiful
Thank
hair.
you so much. I think you can either be a makeup person or a hair person. You don't have to be both.
Remember when it was blue, your hair?
I was going through a breakup, so I don't want to talk about
Yeah.
Okay.
Breakup hair.
that. But
It was good.
they showed me this curler that like, it's not like the traditional curlers where you curl your hair around or like those big wand things. It sucks your hair in and then spits it out.
Oh, Dyson have one of those too.
And it's like and it's so light and it's cordless. So you can charge it overnight and keep it in your handbag or your car. And you choose like the heat temperature, you choose which direction you want the curl to go in, and you can choose how curly you want
what kind of curl
it.
does it leave you with? Like beachy waves or?
There's 4 options. So you can like choose on the actual device, like if you want just a wave or like a tight curl. I always go tight curl because my hair is so thick that it drops.
Yeah.
But also
So
the
the
curl
tighter
so
it
good.
is, yeah,
It like keeps it in there. And it took me 10 minutes to do my hair. Isn't that insane?
How
From
long
an
does
hour.
it normally take?
An hour.
It takes you an hour
Yeah.
to do
Oh,
your
that's
hair.
very good.
Yeah.
Is it expensive? There are so many amazing new hair tools on the market. Some of them are incredibly expensive.
It's around 150, I think, which is expensive,
Yeah,
but not
even
the most
so,
I've
no.
seen
No.
it.
$700.
Yeah,
No.
no.
Okay, that's awesome. So
That's a
I've
quick
got
one.
a few.
Yeah, you got heaps.
I've had my fibre. I'm ready to release my recommendations into the world. The first thing I want to recommend is a book that was out this week that I've wanted to tell Out Louders about for a while. It's called Out of the Box, and it is subtitled A One-Stop Guide to Navigating Neurodivergence. It's by Rebecca Sparrow and Madonna King. They both live up in Brisbane. Madonna King is a terrific journalist and has written many, many books about parenting and other things. Beck Sparrow, friend of the pod, absolute gun expert on teenagers and tweens. But this book is so good. I know that there are a lot of Out Louders who have kids of all different ages who are neurodivergent, so that might mean that they are on the autism spectrum or they have ADHD. Madonna and Beck surveyed and interviewed almost 2,000 Australians, including like experts and educators and children and their parents, and they gathered all the most useful tips to help support these kids, and not just when they're little, but also like when they're learning to drive and when they're, you know, maybe moving out of home and finding friends. And
There's a lot about schools too and how
Yeah.
best to deal with education when your kid doesn't fit the box. Which
exactly,
is,
exactly. And Beck has a neurodivergent child, and it's even stuff about applying for jobs and insights from teachers. And it's just such a great book. It's a terrific handbook. If you've got someone who is living with someone who's neurodivergent, it's a great gift. Highly recommend it. Some of my other recommendations are I have read a book by someone we all love on the show, Taffy Brodesser-Akner. She is one of the best profile writers in the world. She works for the New York Times. She wrote a book called Fleischman is in Trouble, which was made into a TV series, and her next novel is called Long Island Compromise, and it is about a very wealthy family, 3 generations of that family, and the impact it has when the father is kidnapped for a period of time and then returned. And it's not a thriller. That actually happens early on and he's returned. It's not like a mystery or a thriller. If she was not a woman, she would be being compared to Jonathan Franzen, who is this great American author who writes generational novels.
She's amazing.
She is incredible.
Absolutely
it's such
amazing.
a good book. I love her writing. Yeah, I just loved reading this book. So I read that on my Kindle, Long Island Compromise, a book that I listened to that I cannot talk about enough or recommend enough. It's Lisa Marie Presley's memoir, and it's the audio book. And the reason Lisa Marie Presley, of course, only child and daughter of Elvis Presley, mother of Riley Keough, who, this bit's important, she's an actor, she was in Daisy and the Six. She started to write a memoir. And she died last year of a cardiac arrest in her 50s. And she had started work on this memoir. She'd recorded some voice notes. She'd done some interviews and there were recordings of those. This memoir has been finished by her daughter Riley, who after her mother's sudden death came upon all of this work and had to think about, am I going to put it out in the world? The narrator who does Lisa Marie's voice is Julia Roberts.
Oh, wow.
And there are also some of the recordings of Lisa Marie's actual voice.
Is it emotional?
Yes. And then Riley weaves her story through as well, like her experience of her mum. And it's an incredible story. Like Riley's brother took his own life a couple of years before Lisa Marie died. She married Michael Jackson. It's amazing.
Is all that in there?
Yes, it's all in there.
Oh, I
from
so
Lisa
want to
Marie's
listen to that.
perspective, from Riley's perspective, and then having Julia Roberts narrate it. It's an absolute, I won't say a delight, but it is an extraordinary thing to listen to. And then the last thing I wanted to recommend is a small business brand that makes toys. She's an out louder. She sent some toys from her brand called Freckled Frog. They're these wooden toys. Like there's a lot, that when you've got little kids, and I'd forgotten this now, having Luna, your house is just full of plastic shit.
Yeah, brightly coloured plastic
and
shit.
These are so beautiful. There are all these wooden toys. Like there's this set that I've got that are just all these different people, and there are different people of all ages, and there's like people using wheelchairs and old people, young people, babies, and it's for imaginative play.
Are they still colourful or is it sad beige?
Yeah. No, they're great. No, they're great. And just so interesting. And Luna's at this age now where she likes sort of little objects and sorting things, but they're the kinds of toys that are nice to have around. They
Do
just
you play
look
with
really
them as
nice.
well?
Of course, she
bit.
totally does.
After the break, our best and worst of the week, which include a vibrator ring.
Want unlimited Out Loud access? We drop episodes every Tuesday and Thursday exclusively for Mamamia subscribers. Follow the link in the show notes to get us in your ears 5 days a week. And a huge thank you to all our current subscribers.
It's time for our best and worst of the week, where we tell you about the highs and lows of our week. The rules are it can be superficial, it can be a big thing, it can be a small thing. There's no rules here, there is no judgment. Hol, what's your worst of the week?
My friend Gwyneth is in trouble and it's making me sad.
Oh dear.
Oh, no.
The relish with which people are reporting that Goop has laid off 18% of its workforce.
That's big.
Well, it's not really.
Is
Well,
it
I mean, me as a business person, she
That's
knows.
massive.
But what I mean is I know it is massive, and they're also talking about their slowdowns, but obviously the spin from their side is we're just reprioritising.
Yeah.
Leah, decode that.
Businesses are doing it really tough. Retail is doing it really tough. And she is an online retailer. She sells vibrators and fancy creams and clothes. And interestingly, she has never appointed a CEO. she stayed as CEO. Trini Woodall's done the same with her company. I have never been the CEO because I know I'd be a terrible CEO. I think that often founders aren't the best CEOs for their companies once they get to a certain size. I'm not saying that about Trini, but perhaps Gwyneth isn't. And, you know, they were doing a lot of those, this candle smells like my vagina, and all those like shock things, gets lots of coverage, but it's clearly not translating to sales.
Here's the thing. So the reason I've made it my worst is because it's also the time of year when the Goop gift guide comes out. And it's one of my absolute delights to go and peruse that gift guide, right? Because how would I survive if I didn't know about the $250 vibrator ring?
Yeah.
Or
What's a vibrator ring?
It's literally like a ring on your finger, but it has, you'd like it actually, it has like a big gold bullet thing on it that doubles as a vibrator.
Oh, that's so clever.
Yeah, I know, right?
So if a meeting gets boring or this podcast,
exactly.
I was like, what's that sound?
I could just sort myself out.
Someone's phone's going off.
It's not, reacting with the technology. Anyway, or $630 caviar or body balance magnets. It is my pleasure, right? I like scrolling through all her like plain black polar necks that inexplicably cost like $3,000.
However, you never buy any of
and
that.
that's my point, right? Is that I was thinking like, oh, that rainbow yoga mat for $2,000.
Do you know
looks
what
like a thing.
actually?
And then I was like, but maybe I'm part of the problem because I've never even once bought anything from the Goop Guide, and yet I love looking at it.
I actually don't think that's the problem, Hole, as much as I don't want you to blame yourself for this. I actually think, having read quite a bit about this, and business is hard, man. No shade on Gwyneth. Business is really hard. They expanded into Good Clean Goop, which was a discount line of Goop for Target, and it hasn't worked. So, funnily enough, people aren't that interested in buying a sort of a mid-priced Goop product in Target. So perhaps she tried to expand in a direction, and she should have gone more high-end. She should have done like a $1,000 fancy vibrator ring that's like platinum plated, and that might have been better. Who knows? I'm not a retailer.
I'm sure she has one of those.
So you're really sad about that.
Thoughts and prayers.
Yeah, it's my worst. I'm pouring one out for Gwyneth. Like, seriously, what can you do if you haven't got the Goop Guide in your back pocket? My best is reversing my car into a tree, which I know that sounds counterintuitive.
It's a plot twist I didn't see coming for your best.
So last weekend in Bury, it was the Riders Festival. I don't live in Bury, but I live near Bury. Jessie came down.
Yeah.
Lots of wonderful riders came down. It was great fun. But I had a very busy weekend, like doing sessions, seeing sessions, doing stuff, helping out a little bit, not really. And I was also obviously being a taxi driver for my teenage daughter, because that's all you are, right, at some point in your life.
Best decade.
So, yeah, it's the best decade.
Driving.
I went to pick up one of her friends from a place, and I immediately reversed my car into a tree, which was very annoying and will cost us some money to fix. But the reason it ended up being the best is that we have two cars, and the other car is an absolute shitbox. Like, I'm not even joking. It has wind-down windows, like manual wind-down windows. You can't connect your phone to the stereo. Last time I was in it and I tried to adjust the mirror, it came off in my hand. Like, it's a shit box. And on Sunday night, after I'd just reversed the car into a tree, my friend, who was one of the organisers of the festival, said, "Can you give this rider a lift back to Sydney on Monday morning?" I was like, "Sure, I can." And then I realised I was going to have to drive them in the shitbox car. Not only that, but Brent had transported a whole lot of waste from the garden in the shitbox car. So the shitbox car had spiders and hay fever, allergen things.
Oh, gosh.
The reason this all ended up being my best is because that 2-hour drive in the hilarious car with no podcasts and no music, but a very good conversation with this person, it was actually like, it was one of those things where a comedy of errors ended up giving you a present. You know what I mean? Every now and again that happens, right? Mia, what's yours?
My worst is that the other day I put on my shower cap, and do you have a shower cap, Em?
No, that's so weird.
I don't understand.
No one has a shower cap except for Mia.
You two have so much hair. I don't understand how you have showers without
You shower
getting it
like
wet.
this. You
And
do
you-
this pose.
and
where
you tie your hair
stick
back.
your chest out.
But why would you want to when you can have a shower cap?
I don't like the noise that it makes.
And
when
I don't know where
hits
you
it.
keep it without it going slimy.
Yeah. And it kind of smells a bit
Keep
weird.
it on your towel hook. But also, I don't have my ears in it. I think maybe because I have my back to the shower, the water. Do you have your
I know,
front?
I face
the shower.
Oh, I don't face the shower.
Maybe
So
this is
because
unpacking this riddle.
This might make a little bit more sense. But also I rotate a little bit. Like sometimes I turn around.
Well, you have to clean your front sometimes.
Gotta clean your front.
You have to
it's so
clean your
true.
front
Gotta
bits.
clean your front. Anyway, I put my shower cap on my head, And I was like, what's
Oh,
that?
no.
Is maybe some of my hair's fallen out. Glanced in the mirror. There was a cockroach running down my face.
Oh,
And this
Ran
is why we don't use shower caps.
down into my cleavage, and then I brushed it away and off it ran. Anyway, it wasn't lovely. That was my worst. Pretty bad, right? Best though
Right.
is that every so often I have we call it our OG family dinner. It's my family of origin. So it's my parents and my brother. No partners, no kids, just the four of us.
Oh.
And we had one of those, haven't had one for ages, and it was really lovely. And then my mum asked, oh, darling, when are you going to be back on Out Loud? And usually she doesn't like the show when I'm not on it. She's always like, I'm missing you on the show.
That's fair. I mean, I only do this for her, so that's quite disappointing
Well,
for me.
we're going to get to you. And then she said, oh, no, look, I actually have been loving Amelia and Em. I've been loving them.
And you went, thanks, Mum.
No, that makes me so happy because I love having people so I can go away and do other things. I said, what do you love about Em? Because whenever anyone gives me a compliment or compliments anything work-related, I ask them why, because I always want to learn. And so I'm like, what do you like about them? And Mum said, well, Amelia's she's so dry and she's so funny and she knows so much. And I said, and what about Em? And she said, she's tough, but she's also vulnerable. Like last week, she had her jeans and she was bleeding into her jeans. And this guy who she'd been with, but I think it was just a one-night stand, was like, I think you're bleeding in your jeans. And then Holly said, well, did he stay the night? And she's like, I don't know if I'm going to see him again. And my dad and my brother were just like, wait, so who's bleeding into their jeans?
My colleague.
And it's not.
Is it weird that you're like, this is my employee?
Yeah.
Yeah,
We're
it was not
discussing at the
inappropriate at
family
all.
table?
So it was not the way I expected the dinner to go, but I just thought it was delightful and I loved that description of you.
I
And
love
also
that
that
description.
the conversation over dinner was you leaking into your jeans.
I love that. That's going to be
That's
pumping my ego
hilarious.
for the rest of the week.
What was your worst, Em?
Okay, my worst, which now I feel bad talking about because you just complimented me, but I'm about to complain about work.
Oh, good. I like
I
it
would
when them
expect
complaints.
nothing less. I would be disappointed if you didn't.
People who put meetings between 12 p.m. and 2 p.m. deserve jail time.
Excuse me. Our record is 11:30 till.
That's what I'm trying to say.
I see.
Producer M, that's what I'm trying to say.
Prison. You should be in prison.
Every single day last week, I had a meeting or a recording during the lunch break.
Do you have a 2-hour lunch break?
No, I do like half an hour. Sometimes I push it to an hour, except I don't think I'm allowed
So
to
why do you
actually
need a
that.
window of 12 till 2?
Well, I'm just saying like I could like go any time between then.
You never know when you're going to
Yeah.
go.
You
She doesn't
never
know.
know when you need lunch.
Could
She
Couldn't
doesn't
you-
when she's got people that she wants to talk to in the kitchen.
Yeah.
Couldn't you move, shift your lunch break depending on when the meeting was, unless it was a 2-hour meeting that went from 12 till 2, and I don't think anyone's invited you to that.
That's not the thing. The thing is like my friends will have their lunch break and then I'll come out of the meeting and then no one's there in the kitchen and then I have to
She doesn't want to eat alone.
I either have to sit by myself or sit at my desk and then work while I'm eating.
Because we have a big common area at Mamamia, which we call the kitchen.
And you know what? At lunchtime,
It's
it
our
is
tricky
often
name.
buzzing.
Yeah.
Like it
I
really
sometimes call it
is
the
something.
cafeteria because it feels like a cafeteria.
Yeah, it's like a cafeteria. Lots
But the
of
thing
different
is, it's
tables.
like there's so many more people. Like when I started, there was like 70 people and you knew everyone in our old office. And now there's so many more people that I feel like, oh, I actually don't know you. And it's a bit weird if I just sit near you and you guys are all just in the same team. Like I can't do that.
So you need to, right. So
Yeah.
it's really yucking your yum when someone
Yeah, so-
makes you a lunch meeting.
The work demands are messing with her socialising, Mia.
It's all right.
Definitely talk to HR about that. Say work-life balance, it's important, and that includes lunch.
I need to have full flexibility
Yeah.
of my lunchtime, which means I'm blocking out these 2 hours.
We should just run this audio in the kitchen ongoing.
So true. What's your best?
Okay, my best is that, well, I didn't crash my car, but similar to you, Hol, I don't really like driving. Like driving is like my worst chore ever. So I do have a car because the only times I have to drive is to my parents' house because they live quite far and I live in the city. And then they launched the metro.
The metro is great. I've caught the metro.
Oh, I've been having the best time.
Is that the light rail?
It's in between a train and the light rail, I would say. So it's like a new form of transport that they've launched in Sydney that like I don't know. How do you explain it?
To me,
It feels
it's
like the
no
tube in
different
London.
from any other underground train, but because it's new,
It's fancy.
It's fancy. So the stations are fancy.
Oh, so it's
and-
underground.
Yeah. So the stations are fancy and clean. The platforms are fancy and clean. It's got like a barrier so like you're not exposed to the tunnel. Like it's just
It's faster. There's no driver. So
So what do you love about it?
I love it because now I don't have to drive to my parents' house. So I can jump. So I take it from Gadigal station, which is in the city, and I take it to my parents' place, and it's like a 5 minutes walk to their place. And I'm using public transport.
saving the world.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah, it's so good. And it's like
Everybody
fun.
loves
I feel
it.
like I'm a main character because you can like read your book and then you're looking at everyone going, I know you see me looking smart over here.
Oh, I like that.
It's nice.
Everybody loves it. Thank you so much, Out Louders. We've come to the end of our show today. Thank you for being with us. We hope you enjoy listening to it as much as we enjoy making it. We're going to be back in your ears on Monday, but until then, Em, read us out, my friend.
A big thank you to our team. Executive producer Ruth Devine. She says that she barely knows what decade she's in, let alone if she's happy or not. Our senior producer Emeline Gazilas is generally a glass half full kind of gal, but is particularly content in her current decade.
Which is what? 30s.
She's been in her 30s for 5 seconds. You don't know this.
Okay.
Our audio producer
So
Leah.
far, no complaints. She's 31.
So far, so good.
Our audio producer, Leah Porges, is definitely in her happiest decade now. She hated being a teenager, but is thriving in her 20s. Must be nice. And our social media producer, Isabel Dolphin, who's on holiday now. So we're deciding for her that this is definitely her happiest time. Of course
it is.
Shortly.
And before we go, Out Louders, it's the US election next week.
Oh,
and
no.
Boy, did Amelia Lester have a lot to unpack with Holly and Jessie on yesterday's subscriber episode. We'll give you a little preview of that episode right now. There is a link in the show notes if you want to listen to the whole thing.
Now, did I see that Jennifer Lopez?
She also has come out and she she said, let's get loud. That's her line.
Oh, I love it, J-Lo.
And she's vote Harris all the way. And she's also reposted some very famous onstage imagery of her wearing a Puerto Rican flag made entirely of feathers and her Puerto Rican pride after that commentary. Go, J-Lo.
And we should mention that Puerto Ricans are scattered all over the US because they are American. And so this could have a real impact on things.
Shout out to any Mamamia subscribers listening. If you love the show and want to support us as well, subscribing to Mamamia is the very best way to do so. There is a link in the episode description.